Well, let's talk now to Marc Ostwald, who's Chief Economist and Global Strategist at ADM Investor Services International. Great to see you again, Marc. So, looking at these figures, China's economy is still growing, grew by 4.8% in the third quarter, but at its slowest pace in a year. What does that tell us about the health of China's economy?
Well, it's a very mixed picture. I mean, the industrial production numbers were... because one really has to have a look at the monthly numbers to get a sense of where things are going. So the industrial production numbers were encouraging, particularly the pickup in auto sector output, even if I'm a little bit surprised given the talk of cutthroat competition in pricing terms in the sector. But it doesn't matter. It was still strong. IT was still also strong, as was mining output, including oil. But the weakness in consumer spending is very notable. It is in part a reflection of subsidies which had been in place fading. So you've seen particularly household appliances demand basically falling back from July, running at about 26% to just 3% this month. The worrying part of it really was the fixed asset investment, which you would have expected to be stronger, but I'm sure this is going to be addressed during the fourth plenum, how to bolster fixed asset investment. It's particularly undermined by the weakness in the private sector. And I think to a large extent that reflects the lack of confidence due to the tensions with the USA. You know, a lot of companies had relied on exports to the US. They are finding other outlets, notably the strength in exports to Africa now, up over 50% year on year, and to Asia also above 10%. They are making up for it, but losing the United States as a market is challenging, I think, is probably the best way of describing it.
Well, let's talk about those fixed asset investments, because an element of that is the property sector, isn't it, which is still one of the biggest drags on China's economy. Why has this real estate crisis persisted for so long?
I think it's a combination of factors. One, when there were attempts on the official side to start reining in some of the excesses, particularly at the private sector companies like China Evergrande, it was probably already too late. And what has been left, of course, are companies with very large mountains of debt, and against the backdrop of weakening wage growth, in no small part due to the trade tensions with the US. Also, in part due to the lagging effects of the pandemic and all the measures that were taken there. But it's a very, very large problem to deal with. You can't just basically start writing off the sort of levels of debt that are there, and that's really where the problem lies. Something basically innovative needs to be done to try and ring fence a lot of that debt, and basically gradually wind it down slowly, because what you can't have is basically asking the banks to write off a lot of the debt and taking a massive hit to their balance sheets, which would then impede lending for other projects.
Marc, great to get your thoughts as always. Thanks for coming on the programme. Marc Ostwald from ADM Investor Services International.